Hey guys, it's Anthony Tucker, BHS Class of 2007, and we're here connecting with my friend Whitney Virden, also BHS Class of 2007.
Yeah.
So this makes, I think, the third person from 2007. We had Tyler Glenn the other day, and then we also had Sarah Lunsford.
Okay.
So now we have three. Am I biased towards the class of 2007? I think it's coming out. That's okay. I love my classmates, and it's good to connect. And I know that we stay connected like through Facebook, and it's like from a distance, so it's always good to catch up. So kind of tell me, Whitney, where have things and where's the life kind of taken you since we graduated that May night at Custer Stadium way back when?
Oh my gosh. Well, I got married shortly after high school. I met my husband here. He's class of 2006, and we got married, and then we had a kid, Weston. He's a sophomore now, which is wild. And then we had our second, Emma, and we thought we were done. I mean, we were pretty rocking and rolling at that time. I had kind of been in the banking industry. I dabbled in real estate for a while. I was a stay-at-home mom for a while. And then I think it was around 2017, 2018, I just started going out to our pasture. We were living on a ranch, and I was just collecting wildflowers and just kind of enjoying being in nature, and then had this idea of what would it be like to own a flower shop. I'm a first-generation entrepreneur. I'm a first-generation florist. I really had no idea what I was doing. I just felt called, and I absolutely loved it. So it was about 2019. I had done about 14 weddings, so I just started doing weddings on the side. I'd been working actually at a nonprofit agency, the Bartlesville Regional United Way. They support so many amazing nonprofits here in the Bartlesville area. So this being my hometown, I was really passionate about it. But then I had, in 2019, like I said, we had done about 14 weddings, and we found out we were pregnant again, which was a total surprise because our oldest was 11.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? We're starting all over again? And so I had her in the middle, Josie, I had her in the middle of COVID.
Wow.
When daycares were closed. I had about 28 weddings booked in 2020, and all of those, most of them ended up like rescheduling or, it was the pandemic. So, and with daycares being closed, I ended up having to quit my job at the United Way, and I went home, and then I just told my husband, I guess since I can't do anything else, maybe we'll just start a flower shop. So that's basically how it got started.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So shout out to the Brew team. I will not miss my marketing committee meeting today, so I will be there, Lisa and team. But no, they do so much, and it's kind of like how life works out sometimes is, you go through all this, you think you're on the right path, and then like you said, it's a calling, you're picking wildflowers, like next thing you know, you're like, I'm actually good at this. And I'm passionate about it. And then just when you think you get started, the whole world stops spinning, and you're like, how am I going to recover from this? You become a mom of a newborn again, which is like, shout out to all the women out there. It is so tough. It's such a blessing, but it's so tough. And for you already having an 11-year-old, you're like, guess what? They sleep in their own room. They eat.
They were a lot of help.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
we're like, okay, family, we're having a baby. That's going to take all of us.
This is not a negotiation. Mommy said it's coming one way or the other. But you're like in a different phase of life, and then things pivot. And like I said, when you watch friends and classmates that you went to school with, it's like you see their growth, and sometimes you never get to give them that thumbs up, right? And that's why I'm so glad we're able to talk today, because I get to hear a little bit more behind that story. So speaking about behind the story, kind of tell me, I asked Whitney, obviously, full disclosure, I was like, hey, we need a centerpiece today for the set. So explain to me what you put together, speaking of flowers, in this arrangement here.
Well, I mean, we partner with a farm out of Stillwater. So one of the hardest things for me as a florist, first-time florist, and not joining a network like 1-800-Flowers, FTD, which there's so much about the floral industry that is insane that you probably don't even know, and I'd love to talk to you about that later. But Anyways, I don't have to design based on catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when people go to order flowers, they look online and they start shopping and they're scrolling and seeing all of these different designs to choose from. And all of those designs are all the same on every floral website you go to because they're all in the same network.
Yeah.
So basically you're just picking a design and then it's being reduplicated. Well, for me, I do not like to duplicate anything because then I feel like it really takes the fun out of it, and then you become forced to make it look a certain way. So then you begin to force the product to look a certain way, and it's just not fun. So I don't know, I love these colors, and I just kind of start with one thing. I mean, these mums, these look like little lions to me, and I love their colors, so I started there. But then also my favorite colors are the purples and the pinks, and so I just started pulling from them. I'll tell you one of the things, I never went through art school. I never took art even in high school. I really wish I would have now.
Yeah.
But I truly believed in high school that I didn't have a creative bone in my body. I did choir and I did theater, but I didn't think that I had the ability to create. And it wasn't until I found flowers that it really just kind of changed my mind. It expanded it so much, and then I began to see art, and I began to see all those concepts really coming to life, like dimension and color theory, and why do these colors look good together, and they don't seem like they should go together, but somehow they go together, so how is that working? So it really just kind of changed the way that I looked at things. So
and it's weird, going back to what you said earlier, and not to be contrite, but it is a calling, and sometimes you have to wait through things. Not every door is going to open for you, and for good reason, right? You end up on the path you're supposed to be on eventually. And I loved what you said. Definitely all I can see is a little lion right here now the whole time. But you find your way, and like in high school, when we went to school together, it's like I did nothing in art. I was in theater for a little bit with Markel and the boys, but that didn't last long. God bless Miss Susan Crabtree back in the day for putting up with us. But yeah, that was wild. But it's like I didn't feel creative. The only creative outlet I had, Jeff Neptune and I, we started Video Yearbook back, and we had a great time doing things like what I do today, and eventually full circle, right? Sometimes you come back to that and you find your identity, or at least, what your individual creative identity that way. Because you're right. The thing that I will say about flowers is kind of like websites. So I spent most of my young career building websites as a digital marketing manager for companies, and so many people wanted template-based stuff. And we would compete with other marketing agencies, and there was just like 3 different design styles. They would change the colors, the font styles, the type kit, and that would be it. And it's the same thing in flowers. Like I've seen, if I'm buying something for my mom or my sisters or my wife, probably should change that order up. Let's reverse that. You know what I'm saying? Like it all looks the same. Like, and I just can't do it. It drives me insane because we as individuals have a limited time on this earth. Why not impart our own bit of individuality and expression how we want to do it, right? I'm not saying anarchy, but you get what I'm saying. Like you've got to find your way, and sometimes it's doing the things you don't want to do. And there's plenty of things that I won't say on camera, like jobs I had that I didn't love out of college. But if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be where I am today, right? So talk to me about, you get out of COVID, the 28 weddings, right, that got rescheduled or canceled. You have a newborn. How do you end up now where you're at? Like from 2020, 21 to now, what does that growth look like for you?
Well, I think I just wanted to remain consistent. So crazy thing about it is Dr. Craig, he delivered my son and he delivered Emma. Then he went off to Colorado. And then by the time he got back, I was ready to have another baby. So I was like, Dr. Craig, you did this to me. Okay. I could not have a baby until you came back.
Yeah.
And so, and I tried to tell him, I'm like, okay, so looking at my schedule, I have a wedding 4 days after my initial due date. So can we go ahead and push her induction up 2 weeks? And he was like, you're crazy. We're
Yeah.
not doing that. So I actually had a wedding 4 days after I had her. And then
Wow.
I had another big wedding with the sweetest couple ever. I still just think about them often to this day. And it was 2 weeks after she was born. And I had also done the day of coordination for that wedding. So I was there from like 9 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Wow.
And my husband was at home with our baby and I was nursing. And so, I mean, you just make it work. You just do what you can. And it really does, it takes community, it takes family, it takes everybody pulling behind you. I would not be where I am today without, some of my employees that have been with me in the past, or even, my own family that have stepped in to help. My sister used to help me with day of coordinating. You just kind of make it work. And, for the longest time, I mean, Josie grew up in the flower shop.
Yeah.
She took her first steps in the flower shop. And the times we had together there, I will cherish forever. Right before she started school, because now she's in pre-K, right before she started school, she was really enjoying communicating with the customers.
Yeah.
I mean, customers would come in and she would just be like, "Hi, welcome to my mommy's shop. She has chocolates for sale and she has flowers for sale."
Yeah.
I mean, she was just like talking. I'm like, "This is my number one salesman in
Yeah.
here." She would get bored. She'd open the door and she would yell out, "Flowers for sale, flowers for sale." She was like, and she was just she was my little friend in there every day. And it was so cool. And my son, he's come in, he washes buckets, he helps with deliveries, he helps me with weddings. My daughter, man, there's been some nights where I've had weddings and I've been stressed, and she's sat right beside me, and she's like, Emma, the middle one, she is like my greatest hype girl. I remember when we opened our second location in February of 23, I had talked so much about what I wanted our flower shop to look like, and I had this vision, and we honestly just could not find the right location here in Bartlesville. And I never thought about expanding and having 2 locations, but the opportunities just aligned, and it was like the perfect space. And I remember the first night we were in there, and I'd brought all my furniture and everything, and I was just about to start arranging it, and my daughter, she stopped me and she said, "Mom, look at this. Look at this." She was like, "We've been talking about this for years and now it's here." She's like, "Look, your couch is right here and this is right here." And I was like, "You know what, Emma? You're right." So, I mean, really, where I am today has a lot to do, with my family. And my husband has literally been the absolute best. He never really wanted me to start a business. It was never even a conversation we had. I was just kind of like, I like doing this. And then it kept building and kept building and kept building. But I remember when it's been at its hardest, and I'm thinking, you know what, maybe I'll just go work 9 to 5 for somebody else, and like I won't have the stress. I'll actually get days off. I'll only work 40 hours a week. That might be easier.
Yeah.
And my husband would be like, "You know what, you've worked too hard to just do that."
Yeah.
And once you get through those, I mean, it's been amazing.
Yeah. You about made me cry. That's very wholesome about the little girl, because I'm a girl dad, proud.
Yes.
2X girl dad now. 2X. Yeah, I've got all the shirts too. I got all the sweatshirts. I'm a proud dad. But that is so hard, though, is for people to understand that it's a full-time commitment to do something like that, to be an entrepreneur. I remember when, and kind of some shared stories, is when I co-founded Driven Digital, first marketing agency. I was at OU Law, and I left to run for State House. I just couldn't do it anymore. There's actually a classmate of ours that was in that class at it's called 1L of OU Law. And one day I was just like, I can't do it. I've got to get back to being a creative. I can't, they wanted me to read Marbury v. Madison and con law, and I was like, this is very boring. I don't want to do it. And so I remember only getting like $400 a month is all we could afford, because we were trying to, we were cash strapped. We were trying to just finance everything without going to the bank. And we were in this incubator at RSU. So we grew out of there, and then we get our own place over in Pryor, Oklahoma. Shout out Pryor. And the lawyer over there by the courthouse, speaking of these weird connections, right? He said, "You know what? I'll give the space to you boys for $400 a month. No contract." Everywhere else we had been looking at, speaking of spaces, they wanted to know. They wanted your blood sample. They wanted everything. And they wanted a 5-year commitment. And I'm like, I don't know if we're going to be around in 5 months. Like we're trying to, and then next thing you know, we get our first big client, Hydro Hoist boat lifts. We get Hydro Hoist. We do some rebranding. We build a whole new website network for them. And it's like, then you don't, sometimes like what your daughter said is like, you got to stop and pause. And I think what entrepreneurs do sometimes is we're hustle. And sometimes you got to step back and think, man. So I will tell you a cool full circle story. So I went back probably a couple years ago when I was back I drove to Pryor, and I went to go see a bunch of young kids that were working at Driven Digital. I had left and started my own thing in like 2017. And so I go back and I have lunch with them, and I'm helping them on a big revenue project in Minnesota. And I sat down at this table and I said, boys and girls, do you know where we're sitting at? Oh no, I don't know, Tuck, I don't know. I said, I remember when David and I went to buy this table, a discount table, this conference table, and it was $900. And we were looking at each other, and we were in the truck, and we drive to Tulsa, not a very good part of town, and we go buy it. But it's like, you remember those little things. You're like, we couldn't really afford it, but when we had clients in the office, we needed that, and we needed the TVs, and but it's like, but so full circle sometimes, and kids are always honest.
Oh yeah.
Brutally honest sometimes. You've just got to see that picture and then look at where you've been versus where you are now. And where you are now is not always going to be, where you're going to go. So talk to me now. So you're still mostly weddings, or like individuals just walk in and they want your creativity and they're like, hey, I need some flowers for the set, like we have right now, or is it mostly event based, or you have corporate companies reaching out?
So we are a full service flower shop, and so I have a team, and so we do daily deliveries. We deliver to Bartlesville, Dewey, Nowata. We've gone into, now that we're in the Puska area, we go to Hominy, we go to Winona, Barnstall. So, I mean, we have deliveries that we're doing every day. And then we also have what we call grab and goes. So to kind of just talk a little bit about the floral industry, if I can. So when I got started, software, which you probably understand, there's really not a whole lot of software out there. Like, do I get a GoDaddy site and then try to get them to order online, but then it doesn't ask for a message and it can't charge based on, now it's charging them shipping. How do I there's just so much, like, it is not meant to be able to take a floral order online. So the only options out there are like 1-800-Flowers, FTD Flowers, all these things. But those companies require a contract, and what you're doing is you're signing up with them and you're receiving their catalog, and they say, okay, now when somebody orders these flowers, you have to be able to fulfill whatever that picture is. So now you have to buy their containers, that little smiley face mug that's like get well soon. You see on every website you look at, that's a wire. So basically now you have to buy those containers, you have to buy all the product. So whatever it's needed to fulfill that order, you now have to have. You also aren't allowed to take off like more than 2 days in a row, because you got to again be able to fulfill any order. And they make you like, are you even considered a florist? Like, there was so many steps to even get into that, and I was like, sounds like prison.
I know. And
I don't want that.
And that's how I feel now, talking about this. I feel that that's what has happened to takeout with food. And something that really frustrates me, old man take right here, is that we have all these virtual restaurants that have popped up that don't even exist. Like Chili's is technically another wings place as well. And it's like, I feel like we're just commoditized everything, going back to our earlier part of our conversation. And it's like, sometimes, I like going into a locally owned like Luigi's. Like, I want to try something different. I don't just want whatever everybody else is eating, or whatever somebody's pinned the most on Pinterest.
Yes. Well, and I feel like, and if you want to even expand on that, and what I believe is, it's like, we're trying to fit so many people into boxes, and we're trying to make it so easy that individuality, creativity is being broken. And I truly believe we are all meant to create in some way. And so when we aren't creating, then we're just falling in line with the closest thing that looks like us, which is never really us. So, so when I got into the floral industry and I was trying to figure out how do I take orders, all these different things, I did finally find some software that allowed me to create my own designs, upload them myself. And really what I try to do is educate everyone. Give me a budget. Give me a general idea. What is the occasion? because I truly believe things can speak in different ways. I can use colors in a way to symbolize something. There's different things that you can do, and I believe now, it took me so long, but I believe now that I'm an artist. So it's like, let me create something that speaks. And so we do everyday deliveries. A lot of our customers will call, give me a budget, I make them something beautiful. We have some different options, very cost-effective options because of our relationship with the farm out of Stillwater. They actually drive a semi-truck to me every Tuesday in Pawhuska, and then we redistribute all those things. We have flowers, grab-and-go flowers available at Lollipops here in Bartlesville. We have them in our location in the ITIO building, which we now partner with Early Bird Market, which is a farmers market hub. Amazing products, amazing people, absolutely love it so much. We have our location in Pawhuska, so again, we do stuff there. I do weddings still. We do weddings, events, corporate events. We have contracts with the Green Country Village. We actually take flowers to them weekly for their dining room tables. We have contracts with the Mercantile in Pawhuska, so we do the flowers there. We do workshops, and we do team building workshops, which are really fun. And so, we really have just tried to diversify as much as possible and just, serve the community in whichever way that we can. One of the things that I was able to do is back in April, I was selected to participate in the Art in Bloom competition at the Philbrook Museum in Tulsa.
Wow.
So I was able to, so they just randomly selected a room. I got the room Madonna and Child, and I went in there and I wanted to make something, but I just felt this need to sculpt.
Yeah.
Again, never been in art. This is just something I've just been dabbling in, but I just wanted to sculpt something. I ended up making 2 life-size people, a mother and a child.
Wow.
And I'm Native American, Comanche, Kiowa, Cherokee. My dad's full blood, my mom's Cherokee. And there is less than 1% representation of Native American florists in the industry.
Wow.
Total. And so I thought, this is going to give me an opportunity to give it a Native American story. So I actually built the mom and the child, and the story behind it was of the boarding school era, which in 23, they signed a Truth and Acts. So there's going to be a lot more coming forward of the boarding school era and what that did to the Native American community. But it was just the story of a mother's loss and this assimilation, and where's this kid's path leading. Super, super cool. I constructed it out of chicken wire air clay, dried leaves, dried rose petals, and dried amaranthus, and I ended up winning People's Choice.
Wow. That's
so
awesome.
It was like, I think when that finally happened, I got to go on Channel 6 News. I talked with Tess about it, and my mom called me. She was like, "Oh my gosh, Whitney, did you see what they flashed under your name?" And I was like, "No," and it said Whitney Virden, Native American artist. And I was like, "Oh my
Let's
gosh,
go.
I'm an artist now."
No art class in high school required.
I know.
But kids, take art. Please take art.
No, I can't. Take art, take music, take drama, get creative and allow yourself to explore your individuality, and don't be worried about trying to fit in, because trying to fit in, what are we fitting into?
Yeah. No, I love that story. The Philbrook is amazing. And representation, when we talk about, we talk about the McGirt Act, recently, which then finally brought the reservations back, or recognized, because we could talk about treaties all day. Because my daughters are Cherokee, my wife is Cherokee. My daughter, my firstborn, is named Wilma, after Wilma Mankiller. I went to my master's in issue and leadership, was through a Native American lens, obviously. And so I got to go to school with this lady, Sharon Black Fox, and she was the old personal assistant for Wilma Mankiller when she was deputy chief. And so I got to hear stories about Wilma and about Charlie Soap, and so I was bought in, at that moment. And we lived in Tahlequah for 4 years. We had our firstborn at Hastings there in Tahlequah. We didn't make the return trip for the second because it's like we didn't want to be separated from the first. How it gets me on multiple kids, but it's a story I feel like that hasn't been told maybe during our era, but it is being told now more. We're in a living, breathing school at the moment. But it's so amazing to see this renaissance in being able to talk about our roots, because we border, like you talked about, the different tribes you are associated with, that you're a part of. But this whole time, we're where the Cherokee meet the Osage. And we have so many great stories. And now through Apple TV and, we're seeing, for Killers of the Flower Moon. But to actually see people on the ground, Native Americans being able to tell their story and express themselves through different works and through different mediums. And I think it's a story that should have been told a long time ago, right? And there is a lot of change. So policy-wise, we won't get into that, but it is so cool to hear that. And like you said, that Native American artist taking us full arc back to, I didn't even know I could express myself in that way. So I know that I'm proud of you. And like I said, it's that third degree, you're seeing it, third degree of separation through social media. But it's like you see that and you're like, you hit the like button, but it's like you got your little pom-poms and you're like, yeah, that's awesome. Good job. I know we haven't talked in a long time. I don't want to post a comment and be like weird, but I want to be like, or a GIF, but just be like, that rocks. And so how do you feel that what you just talked about and winning the People's Choice Award for that, which is crazy to use like chicken wire. I have terrible, I have tremors. I've had them since birth. There's no way I could do anything. Thank God I'm not a doctor. Shout out Dr. Craig. I would not be good. Let me help you with this. But tell me, like, how do you think that's impacting your kids when they see you do these things?
I think it's having a major impact on them. And, and that's a lot of the reason why I think now I'm doing it. Once you become a parent, you begin to see and you begin to think, okay, my mom was right about that. Oh, I wish I would have listened to my parents when it came to that. Like, there's so much wisdom in, what our parents are trying to teach us, in those years. And I mean, those are such formative years. And, my daughter, she would stay up with me again. Emma, I tell you what, that girl is like my number one cheerleader. And Josie actually helped a lot to the project too. So I have a whole video of us putting it together, and she's slapping that air clay on there and she's doing her thing. And she kept going, we're going to get a trophy. I know we're going to get a trophy. And I was like, Emma, I was like, Josie, I don't even know what you would win, honestly. I'm like, I don't really think we win anything. We just get like this, we won, People's Choice Award or whatever. I got a certificate. They actually made a certificate specifically for Josie, because when she came in, she was like, where's my trophy? And then our church actually found a trophy and gave it to her. So Josie got what she needed from the project. She was very proud of it.
Yes.
She would tell people about it. But I do think, for me, I think the most important thing is I just want to show my kids that, like, you really can do anything you want to do. Like, you really can.
Yeah.
And we all can do anything we want to do. It's just going to take consistent effort.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back on, like, honestly, why I ended up quitting my real estate job. We had lost my nephew. My sister had lost her son, and he was 9 years old, and my son was a couple years younger than him. And I just was starting to live with this, because I was traveling, like what we were talking about, your job before. You're traveling, you're doing all these things, trying to become a millionaire by the time you're 30, all that stuff that comes into
like
your
and subscribe.
head. Exactly. Yeah. You're like, I'm going to do all these things. I gotta do this. And so I feel like that, really took me. And I was like never home, missing stuff. Couldn't even take off to go to a doctor's appointment with my kids. Like, I was just solely focused on, I've got to make something for them. And then we lose my nephew, and then it just completely, my perspectives, they just shift. And I thought, what is all this about? Exactly. The alarm went off in my mind of like, what is all this about? And I decided I quit my job. I came home and I told my husband, I was like, hey, I quit my job today. And he was like, what is happening? What do you mean you quit your job? I was like, we'll be fine. I just quit my job. And I mean, we were making really good money, and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll figure it out. And that's why I say he's like the most patient man. I'm so thankful to have him in my life, because he has walked with me through, like, I'm going a different direction now. Like it's, he's been a supporter. But anyways, I did. And I spent all that time, 1.5 years with my kids in nature. And that's when the flower thing took. So if you really think about it, like in 2017, is when I really kind of was playing with it. And then in 2019 is when it really started to take shape. And then here we are in 2024. And so, I mean, all of it has just been consistent steps.
So Speaking of that, I think the hardest thing to balance as parents is that chasing your own passions and expressing yourself and being happy about things that you personally care about rubs off on your kids, right? It makes an impact on them. And that hopefully one day, like you're talking about with your kids, they grow up and whatever it may be, it might be completely different than flowers, right? But they will juxtapose that passion that you brought there to what they want to do. And I think it's important. I think sometimes as parents, we get so worried because there's so much pressure, just as parents, but also social media, right? And we speak like and subscribe stuff. But that's not the life we have to live. That what's innate in us is not on a device. It's not a like or follow. It's right here between you and I having a conversation. You with your daughter as she's opening the door saying flowers, 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 right? And, you know, like we were talking before, your son working on a ranch. That is where we find ourselves. Sometimes we look too far into self-help when our self-help is right in front of us. So speaking of traveling, we've been talking about traveling. I will say that I can remember the flight I didn't catch to go back to the office. And I thought, you know, what am I going to do? And, you know, my wife supported me through that. And it is tough. It is so tough. And as a spouse, you know, you'll reciprocate that throughout time. But it is tough to ask that of someone, to be like, you know what, hey, we're making really great money, but we're going to get one more check and that's going to be it. So I hope things are going good for you. Don't quit your job. But it is hard. So it's so cool to kind of talk about that growth and like I said, I know that, you know, thinking about the other classmates that, you know, I've been able to talk to through this process, it's so cool to finally be able to be like, you know what, like I said, it's the pom-poms, everything, like we've been cheering. So it's good to make those connections. So traveling back in time to the early 2000s, yes, that was a time many years ago. What was your go-to song when you got in the car? What was your jam?
Oh my gosh. The first one that comes to mind is Roller Coaster of Love.
Who was that by?
I have no idea.
What, you just dropped something? I thought you were just going to be like T-Pain.
No idea. Yeah, no, I have no idea. Let Me Buy You a Drink by, yeah, that one.
Shout it.
I don't know. You know, the music is so funny, but yeah.
What about now? What music do you listen to now?
Just praise and worship all day long.
Let's go.
Honestly would not be here if it wasn't for him. I think about that all the time because I'm like, you know, I grew up my whole life not thinking I had a creative gift. I walked through so much pain and grief losing my nephew, and then just so happened to pick up a flower, and this is where my life is now. Yeah. I do not take any credit for that. I couldn't. And it is amazing what he's been able to do. You know, the crazy part about this too is that I lost a second nephew.
Wow.
And at that time I was actually in flowers. So when we lost my first nephew, he was actually living in Florida, and we ended up bringing him back home, and not a whole lot of people knew him. And so, you know, and he was 9. There was so much we didn't even think about ordering flowers. So I remember when we finally got to the service, there was like one dish garden.
Yeah.
And I remember it impacting me then at that point, being like, oh my gosh, we totally forgot something. And I wasn't in flowers at the time at all, but I remember that impacting me. So we lost my my other nephew, Zach Barnes, and that was really hard. And that's, you know, it's only been a few years since that loss, but my brother asked me if I would do his casket piece. Wow. And I thought, okay,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I would love to honor him. And I remember going to the flower wholesaler in Tulsa and walking in and trying to figure out, like, what am I even supposed to pick out?
Yeah.
You know, like what colors, you know, like all those things started coming to mind, and I started pulling blues and oranges and yellows and stuff. That's not my cut. I like pastels. So I'm like, what are these vibrant colors, you know, and I'm just pulling them, and I put the piece together, and I show up the day of his visitation, and I go to place it on the casket. And the night before, my brother and Zach's mom decided they went to the store, and they found this Nike hoodie that was orange, blue, and yellow. And that's what they decided to put him in. So when I showed up and I placed the casket piece, it matched him.
And just fit.
perfectly.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
there's no explanation,
Yeah.
for something like that. And so I just feel like throughout my entire floral journey, and even when I was building the mom and the child, and I was going through this, really learning more about like the boarding schools. My great-great-grandmother, Mary Wakakwalti, was actually in a boarding school.
Wow.
And there was just so much has just been coming up that I'm like, it's just created so much healing for me in a lot of ways. It's allowed me to express myself artistically, to discover a side of myself I didn't know existed, but it's also provided such healing. And I can't provide that for myself.
Yeah.
That's come from him.
And I would say that, thinking of Wilma Mankiller, she has a great quote that I love to kind of guide my decision making is you got to look 6 generations in the past and 6 generations to the future when you're making a decision, because I think about boarding schools, right? And you have to look when you're crafting policy. We're not too far removed from things like that, so it's good to look back. So speaking of looking back, where was your go-to spot to eat when we had an off-campus lunch back in the day?
Oh my gosh, Ryan's grandma. So again, I met,
Shout out.
I met Ryan back in high school, and his grandma, oh man, she would make potato soup, fried chicken. She would just cook every day. We'd go over there, and so we would always go to Ryan's grandma's house. That was my favorite place.
I'm
to
jealous.
Go.
It's something about like grandma's cooking. Everybody out there is like, and it's it's natural. It's like heartwarming every time, and it doesn't have to be soup. Speaking of shout out. But I think definitely back in the day it was very stressful to get to lunch, and we would try to go out to Oak Park to my house sometimes. We would go hit up all the buffets. We hit up Bueno when Bueno was around. Caused some trouble, of course, at a few of those stops. So sorry. And then thinking about also back in the day, what do you think the number 1 movie was at the box office? Did you go to the movies a lot? Did you go to the mall?
Man, the mall used to be, I think when I was like 13, I remember like this was the place to go. And then even in movies, it's so funny because Ryan was such a country boy.
Yeah.
And I used to go fishing with my dad, and that's about as country as I got. And and I remember one time he took me to this pond out at the Yoakum's place, and there was cows around the gate, and he's like, you need to get out and open that gate. And I was like, I ain't getting out there with one of them cows. No, Dad, you got it. I ain't stepping out there with one of those cows. And he used to always get out and he'd open the gate. So then I ended up marrying Ryan, who one of our first dates, they were actually working spring cattle. And he was like, come out here and work these cattle. And I was like, okay. And so once we started dating, then we spent all of our time in nature. My favorite, we didn't really go to the movies. We would just go out on a 4-wheeler and we'd drive around and we'd fish and we'd shoot guns. And it was just a completely different life. But to this day, we'll go up to a gate and there'll be cows around, and he's like, go ahead and get that gate. And I'm like, you already know.
Honey, you go do that, please.
I ain't getting out there with one of them cows. No.
Did you have a favorite dance that we had back in the day?
I would say probably the butterfly. The butterfly was probably the only one I knew. Now, I will tell you, back in like 6th, 7th grade when we were doing like track meets and stuff, because I ask kids today, I'm like, okay, do you guys do any kind of dancing outside of TikTok dancing? Because back in my day, we met up under the bleachers.
That is true.
And we would have dance-offs, and me and Crystal, remember Crystal Fugit? Me and her, we would choreograph dances all the time, and so we knew when one of those dance battles came up, we had a whole thing. And I remember that. So it was all kinds of different things. And they don't do that today. They just go on TikTok and
I don't know. I guess you watch this. I've never done that. So I've walked by to see kids here at our high school campus at BPS, and I'm just like, I'm just going to keep walking. I'm not going to ask any questions. They look safe.
If they took those TikTok dances and they did them face to face and they had a battle, that would be cool. That would be cool. It would be like a TikTok challenge.
What was that? Well, I think of Bring It On, obviously. The original.
Oh, absolutely. Bring It On. Yeah.
What was the dance? There was a dance one. Now it's just.
So you think you could dance?
Yes. That was good.
Stomp the Yard.
Stomp the Yard.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Legally Blonde, I don't know when that came out. I like lose track because I had a baby like right after high school, so I'm like, what?
It's so true.
So hard to. I'm like, wait, because I was watching Lion King.
Yeah.
I remember rewatching The Lion King and all of my favorites with my toddler.
Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I cannot watch
Oh
it
my
anymore.
gosh.
It's
Oh, Sid the Science Kid was like Weston when he was growing up. That
Yeah.
was his thing. I like my mom. My mom is cool.
Moms
Yeah.
are always right.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for joining me today and taking time out of your busy day to have a chat. Super proud of you, like I said. And so thank you so much, Whitney, for coming on here with me. That's it for today for Alumni Chat.